Welcome to the Biz Kidz Podcast. We're back today again to talk entrepreneurship, and we're here to help kids and parents figure out what to do and how to start. And today I have the guest, Matt Rentz. He's an attorney, and he's going to be here to help us kind of navigate what do I need to do legally to get my business started. Matt, as we always like to start off, can you give us your 60-second pitch of who you are and what you do?
Well, good morning, JD, and thanks for having me. As you said, my name is Matt Rentz. I'm an attorney here in Southwest Florida. I've been practicing for 8 years, and I specialize in estate planning, probate, real estate, and business. My real estate and business practice really lines up with how I do my estate planning. I specialize in the estate planning and probate. I try not to go into anything else. I don't do any litigation. So what I do on the business and real estate side is I help set up where everything lines in to your estate planning, including forming companies and then setting up companies for success. So that way it easily transfers control either to the successors or the heirs.
So you don't have the motto, it's a good day to sue somebody then?
No, sir, I do not go to court.
That's great. Well,
Yeah.
we're going to definitely dive into the legal matters of how to start a business and go on. But let's kind of go back into your past. As a kid, did you have that entrepreneur spirit? Were you trying to have a little side hustle to make some money on the side?
Well, to an extent, JD, I did. I mowed yards a lot when I was a kid, and it might sound a little bad, but most of my money was taken, so I didn't get to really reap the benefit of mowing these yards. It went to the family, and it was one of those things where, okay, we're gonna help out, and like I wanted the money, I wanted to be able to get my own stuff, and then at the same time, my granddad had me do a lot of work for him. He's lived here in LaBelle my whole life, and he was one of the ones where you would go work, and he would pay you like 1920s wages. So when you're done of the day, he'd give you 50 cents, and he's like, when I was a kid, I could go watch movies all day, get a haircut and popcorn and a soda for 50 cents. And I was like, Granted, I can't even buy a pack of gum anymore.
My first mowing job, a guy from my church hired me. He gave me all the equipment. He gave me the mower. He gave me the gas, everything. And I had 13 lawns to mow, and I got $13. So yeah, I got $1 a lawn, and they were smaller yards. It only took me maybe an hour and a half. So
Mhm.
$13 an hour back then, wasn't bad.
No, no.
Back in the olden days, but that's how I started as well. So you were doing that kind of for granddad, kind of helping out around the house. Where did you kind of, when you went off to college or when you started thinking as an adult, did you find side hustles to kind of get yourself through school?
I did. I did a lot of construction work growing up, going with my dad to his job sites because he was a superintendent and then a project manager. And it started out with just cleaning up job sites, and then it slowly I developed a couple skills. Um, and then all through undergrad and parts of law school, I helped plumb and tile pools, and it was one of my favorite jobs I ever had. It's difficult being in a hole in the ground in the middle of summer down here in Florida with the sun beating on you, but I absolutely loved it. And as a kid, and especially going into college, I was one of those people where I didn't want to sit and milk a clock to get paid. I wanted, like, you give me a job, tell me how much you're going to pay me to do it, because I'm going to get it done. I don't want to sit there and if it's only supposed to take me X amount of time, drag it out so I get paid a wage. And you see a lot of people do that. It's like, well, I only get paid hourly, and then they drag their feet. Tell me when I'm going to get paid. I'm going to get it done as quickly as possible.
Yeah, if you want to get it done, get home and have some fun instead of just sit there all day and kind of make
Yep.
drag on and on. So,
Yep.
so what was your first business venture as an adult that you ventured into?
In high school, I started detailing cars. I got the equipment. I had a little cleaning rig set up that I would take out of my Jeep. I had a Jeep Cherokee, and all I had was just the water nozzle. I had my cleaning supplies, the brush, and a shop vac. And I had a few clients that regularly used me. I probably had 10 to 20 clients a month. Some of them might be a couple months, but it was super nice that I would just travel to them. And then after I graduated, I had a Chevy Cobalt, which is a little two-door like hatchback, and I ran it out of that. And it was funny because I'm 6'3", so when I get to places and pop out of this car, everyone's like, I didn't expect to see you get out of there.
Were you making good money on your detailing? How much were you charging back then?
Oh man,
Do
some
you remember?
vehicles were only like $40. It's much lower than what it is now. I made enough to give myself some extra change. I mean, it was through college, so it wasn't trying to make a living paying all kinds of bills, but gave me extra spending money.
And did you ever scratch a car?
Uh, I'm gonna plead the fifth.
Unfortunately, that's one that you have to be really careful with. I know it sounds like an easy gig to get started with, but I've seen a lot of kids say, "Hey, I'll wash your car," and they use the
Mhm.
same dirty rag to wash the tires that they do on the paint, and all of a
Yep.
sudden you have a car that's all scratched up. So if you're gonna get into that business, definitely do your research on how to do it properly because you do not want to have an angry customer coming back to mom and dad and go, "Hey, your kid just scratched my car, and I need to replace it." Then you're looking at that lawyer, then that gets in there and has to work things out. So be careful if
Right.
you get into the car detailing business. So what gave you the inspiration to go the life of a lawyer?
I wish I knew, JD. I really do. If you would have told me in high school that I was going to be an attorney, we all would have laughed. I would have laughed the hardest. I just kind of followed a path. It opened up. I'm pretty logical when it comes to most things. It could be life, arguments, conversations. What's the best answer? I'm a huge fan of Occam's razor, which is a philosophical principle that says the easiest solution is typically the best solution. And it just kind of developed from there. Is like most attorneys are logicians, so they're just going right off of logic. And I say, well, let's do that. And then I got into law school and realized that they all live and die by the 6 minute increment. And I was like, I do not want to live that way. I got a little jaded by the practice of law, and so I developed the mindset that I was going to do it my way, practice my way, and I do everything flat rate fees. But if you would have told me I was going to be an attorney, I would have told you you're crazy.
Yeah, so if you haven't had to deal with an attorney or hire an attorney, they bill you by, is it 6 minutes or
6 minutes, tenth of an hour.
tenth of an hour? So every time they talk to you, and I had a lawyer client in a home watch business that I had, and every time he'd call me, I would tell him, I'm going to bill you in 6 minute increments, and he'd be like, "Well, then I'm not going to be working with you." So. But I'm like, hey, it's your business. That's what you charge your clients. So I tried to play that on him as well.
Yeah, I have a good joke about that also. And no matter, it never fails. If I'm out in public and someone meets me and they're like, "Oh, you're an attorney," it always goes like, "Hey, let me ask you a question." So as a joke, I always say, "Okay, go." And then it just stops them in their tracks. So like, because I look at the clock, and tell them go, like, wait.
You're gonna bill me for this?
Yeah.
Well, we're gonna have to cut this podcast short because we can't afford 6 minute increments to pay for your advice today. So we're gonna try to get free advice without paying the 6 minute increments. So you get into becoming a lawyer. Did you go to work for a firm right away, or did you go into business for yourself?
Right into business for myself. I threw up a shingle as soon as I graduated law school. I graduated and I studied for the bar in Marco Island on a condo, most of the days on the beach reading. I don't know how I was able to do that, but I spent my day studying for the bar and fishing at the same time, and then I passed on my first try. So I was like, "Thank you, Lord. I'm going to go on happily from here that I passed." And then I opened up my own practice, and I wanted to focus primarily on estate planning. But whenever you first open up, I'm sure you have experience. Like we kind of do anything that walks through the door, hence the name and term door law. Like whatever's coming in, that's who I'm going to help. I did that for about 5 years, and then I went and joined a firm in Naples for a little while. And then I said, you know what, I really want to do just the estate planning. So I started my own firm again and went back on my own.
Awesome. And what is the kind of the biggest lesson you've learned running your own shop on and running your own business that you would say this was probably the hardest lesson I've learned, but it, it may have been difficult, but I really learned a big lesson from it. I know that's a hard one to kind
Yeah,
of
that's a
throw at
very
you.
hard one. I kind of got two parts for that. And you'll understand here in a second. So the first part is you have to have confidence in what you're doing. And like you can know what you're doing, you can know the law, you can know the way to practice it, But if you don't have the confidence and, okay, this is how I'm going to do it, you're really going to drag yourself down and you're going to drag issues out and make them more difficult than they actually have to be. And the second part is that if you can find a mentor, find a mentor. Because I started and went right on my own, and I had some mentors, but no one you could really call on. And then I slowly obtained the mentors and then went and had the experience and became more, let's say, confident in my practice. Because before I was spending a lot of time on the fence, like, okay, I'm pretty sure this is what I'm supposed to do. I'm pretty sure I'm allowed to do this. And you beat yourself up a lot on sitting on that fence. And then you go and see that everyone else is doing it. And you're like, see, I knew the whole time. I should have just did it. And that's where the mentor really comes in. If you have someone you can just ping ideas off of, and it might not even be all the time, just every once in a while when you're really stuck, it's like, well, I'm kind of on the fence here. If you have someone you can just call and ask, it makes life a lot easier. And it really helps develop that confidence. Because once you have the confidence and know what you're doing and know how to do it, it flies along.
And that's why we have the Biz Kidz Hub. That nice segue into that. We are here to mentor. We try to surround our kids and our students with people that know what they're doing. No, it might not be a call every day that you're checking in with them, but if you have a question about something, you can always reach out to the Biz Kidz Hub and go, "Hey, I'm not sure about this. Am I legally allowed to do this? Or is this ethical? Or am I making the right decision to do it this way?" And that's what the mentors are here for. Well, what we really kind of want to get into is a lot of people and a lot of parents, a lot of kids all have the question of like, okay, I want to launch a business. What do I have to do legally? And we'll say in the state of Florida, the podcast goes all over the country, but because you're in Florida lawyer, what do we have to do to make sure that we're a legitimate business in Florida?
Okay, well, this is what I'm going to give you the disclaimer, the standard disclaimer that none of this is to be taken as legal advice, and I highly recommend that you seek out your own legal counsel with your legal issues. This may not apply to everyone. Fair?
Fair. I like that.
Okay, so in Florida, you can go to sunbiz.com and you can file to create any type of business, an LLC, proprietorship, a corporation, partnership. You can literally do all of it through Sunbiz, and they do really a good job of setting you up in the sense of what documents do I need to file in order to create a legal business entity. So that's the first thing. And you'll know what's needed in order to create the business because Sunbiz won't let you proceed and file unless you have satisfied all the requirements. So obviously you have to have a name, you have to have your principal place of business. You can put in a mailing address if it's different. In Florida, you have to have a registered agent, which is an RA, and that's basically the person that will be served in the event that the business ever needs to be served. And that must be a Florida address, but everything else can be a foreign address, so it would be another state. And after that, you just have to list, depending on the type of business entity, the owners, the members, managers, and their different positions. So CEO, president, vice president, secretary. And then you have to have it signed by the registered agent and by the filer, which is the person that's actually submitting the documents. But like I said, you go to sunbiz.com. It's super easy. You pick the type of business you want to go with and electronically file. They'll tell you everything that's required in order to file it, and they won't let you submit it without doing so.
It's super easy, but you've just overwhelmed me with all these. I don't have officers. I don't have all these other employees. What about, is there an age restriction for kids? You have to be 18 to form a corporation or an LLC?
That's a phenomenal question, and I'm going to say it really depends because you have to be a legal person, and really following out from that, I would tell you before you go do it, you just do some quick research because it's that classic attorney answer. It depends. So I'm not going to tell you exactly what it is because it really does depend on the situation. But don't get hung up on do I have officers? Do I have employees? It's seriously, if I wanted to go create an LLC, I could literally do it all on my own with my own address, my own signature. I can serve as registered agent. It's very simple. Same with you want to do a corporation. Now, there are a few other requirements that may come into play depending on the type of business or what you're going to actually be providing as services or products to the general public, but it's pretty simple to create a business.
And I like to point that out because there are a lot of our students that are just, this is a side hustle. If they're out there just maybe one weekend or two weekends a year, selling a business or selling a product at one of our like events, is, and again, you're going to say depends. Is it required that they have an established business for something like that? Is there like a threshold, like I can make up to a certain amount of money before the state needs to be involved?
Well, yes, sir. It depends. I'll also tell you that's one where you're going to want to talk to an accountant, a CPA, to talk about the income requirements. So I know that minors have a lot of it don't really pay income taxes, but that still could come into play depending on the type of business. So you can have an LLC, corporation, or partnership, and you can have it elect to be treated as an S corporation, which is a pass-through taxable entity, meaning the business isn't taxed, but I'm taxed. And then it comes into play, well, is it a minor? What's the amount? Are they going to pay taxes on it? Or does Uncle Sam basically waive it and say, don't worry, when you grow up, kid, I'll start taxing you?
And for our parents and students that are listening to this, what we're trying to get across is you do need to do your research and due diligence to make sure that you are following the proper systems to do it correctly.
Mhm.
What I think one of the biggest mistakes is a lot of parents, if they do file the paperwork, they do it under a sole proprietor, which you tell me, Matt, if I'm correct on this, which puts your personal assets at in kind of harm's way, a liability. If something were to come back and say somebody were to sue you or try to go after money for you, you scratched my new Porsche, and the paint job's going to be $70,000, and I don't know what a paint job for a Porsche is, but it, and if the money's not there and you don't have an insurance policy to cover that, I believe in a sole proprietorship, the lawyers can go after whoever's name is on that. So it could be the parents.
Yeah. First off, if a Porsche paint job is $70,000, I'm in the wrong line of business. I need to make a change real quick. But yes, so you're right. A sole proprietorship is just yourself. So it might be registered with the state as a business entity, but it's really just yourself. So when you do anything, you don't have that limitation of liability like you do with an LLC or an actual business entity. So, like you mentioned, sole proprietorship, I make a mistake, it's just me. There's no business entity that can limit my liability. Anything I own could be open to creditors. Now, counter that with an LLC or a corporation. If I do something as the business entity that causes damages to someone else, they can recover, but my limitation, my liability is limited to the business. Now, this is where I'll throw in a quick little mention about piercing the corporate veil, where I can create an LLC, but if I just treat it as an extension of myself, the judge can say you've pierced the corporate veil, and then the creditor against the LLC could attach to anything I own. So that's something you'd also want to look into if you're creating a business entity, is you have to treat it as its own entity. You can't just treat it as an extension of yourself, because if you do, then the judge is going to say, well, there's no limitation to liability because it's just an extension of yourself. And I see a lot of people do that. Well, they use business funds for personal expenses. It's okay to pay yourself from the business. I can pay myself from my firm. I can pay myself from my businesses. That's fine. Then I can use the payments that I've received, wages that I've received from my business for personal expenses. But if I use the firm or my business proceeds to purchase personal expenses, could be going on vacations, could be groceries, whatever it is, someone that sues the firm or business could prove and say, hey, look, that's just an extension of himself. There should be no limitation of liability. He's pierced the corporate veil.
So again, parents, you need to make sure that you're following kind of the proper procedures. Make sure you do your research on what is good. And if your student or your kid is looking at a business that may have some liability like that, there's a couple other industries that I would really warn people as a kid to get into, and that number one is pressure washing. It looks like an easy job. If you're away from the house and you're just on the sidewalks, that's great. But if you start pressure washing around windows and the water gets inside the house, you're talking water damage that can go easily into the six figures depending on what kind of damage there is. And if you get on a roof and on a ladder, you're talking about even more liability to do that. And as a kid, hey, I have a lawnmower or I have a pressure washer. I can go do this kind of thing. You're putting yourself and you're putting your family at the risk of litigation, especially if you don't have an insurance policy to cover you. So make sure you're doing that. I'll give you another scenario that I've seen. recently is there's a company that does car share, like kind of like Uber on Lyft. They're doing that kind of same model, but the owner is using college students as the ones that are driving. Now, I'm not sure how if you're familiar with Uber's liability insurance or anything like that,
Mm-mm.
but if I remember correctly, like if a kid or a college student is using a car that's registered with mom and dad's name on it, and he's using it to transport people to the airport, and they get in an accident, mom and dad are at the ones liable for that, right? Because the car's registered and insured under their name.
I really don't know how the liability works with Uber and Lyft and those rideshare programs, but I know in order to register as a driver, you have to give all that documentation. You have to show the registration, you have to show proof of insurance. But I mean, logical assumption is, yeah, whoever owns the vehicle, whoever has the insurance on it is going to be liable for any damages.
So, mom, dad, don't let your your student use your car that's registered to do rides for people back and forth. Because again, it's one of those things that can get a little hairy. Um, well, Matt, I know you have some kids, and how do you inspire them to look at entrepreneurship and business? Have you give them an opportunity to kind of explore that?
I have. My oldest is 15 and he's looking to get a summer job. And I just keep asking him, and I was like, Brandon, do you want to be limited in the amount of money you can make based on how much time you spend doing it? Because he keeps mentioning about going to certain establishments here in town. And I was telling you, you're going to get paid hourly, which there's no shame in getting paid hourly, but at the same time, that's where I think the entrepreneurship really comes in. It's like, what do I really want to do? If I want to just go milk the clock to get paid, great. I'm limited. I spend 8 hours, I'm limited what I'm going to make. Meanwhile, if you go and do something on your own, yeah, it might be more work, it might be more difficult, you might have to generate it yourself, but then you increase what you can make in that 8 hour period. But I will say you got to get your feet wet. So go learn different businesses. I had hourly jobs when I was in high school. I had hourly jobs in college and law school that I don't knock them, but you learn a lot going that way, and you can really make that decision because once you have the experience of going and being that like hustler type entrepreneur where you can really get after it, make money, and then you see the times where in your life where you had hourly jobs where you might work X amount of hours per week and you're limited in what you can make. So that's where I really come into it. I just tell them, I was like, hey, go get the experience. You're not going to know what you want to do today, and that's okay if you change it in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, as a kid, for me, I worked as a lawn care, like worked for companies and worked for people to do their lawn care work. And then as an adult, I went and got a job in telemarketing selling lawn care. And so, which is a horrible job. Don't ever do telemarketing. But it actually taught me how to sell it the right way. And that ended up launching my landscape or lawn care company, which I had for 23 years. So I took all the experiences that I had in those other jobs and was able to open up my own business and make my own money from it. So it is part of the process to kind of learn that along the way. Any of your other kids have any entrepreneur spirit?
My two middle girls, that's 12 and 9, they have messed around a couple times with doing like lemonade stands in the summer. They always kind of let that fizzle out. My oldest daughter, she's 12, she has messed around doing different skincare products and this and that. But last summer, she wanted to do that and she was wanting to order all this stuff to do it. And I was like, what's your business plan? She's like, what? And I was like, yeah, what's your business plan? What's your bottom line? How much you going to pay for the products? How much you going to sell your actual products for? And that was one of those things that like you just saw it like disappearing. Like imagine it just like nope, I don't want to do this anymore. It's gone. So we'll see. They are right now. I say they're in there developing their skills stage, so they're really seeing what they like, seeing what they're finding out what they're good at.
And what we found is once you give them the opportunity to make a little money for themselves, they have cash in their pocket at the end of the day, and then they're motivated to kind of learn more and do more. I have kids that do our markets that are making on average $700-800 every show. It's hard to go get a part-time job and work all week to make $700-800 when you can make it in a 4-hour event. They kind of learn from there. Well, what's one last word of advice you would give kids to and parents on trying entrepreneurship and getting out there?
So I did say that it's super easy to create a business entity through SunBiz, but although you can create it, you might not have all the documents that you would want to go along with business ownership. And by that, I mean an operating agreement, bylaws. How are you going to actually manage the business, especially if you're going into business with partners or other people? You really want to look at doing an operating agreement or bylaws depending on the business entity, because that's not required to create a business with the state. Uncle Sam's real good about saying, yep, it's super easy to do this. And then if you don't do certain planning, Uncle Sam also has a way to remedy it. But typically, Uncle Sam's remedies are very expensive and time consuming. So I would encourage everyone, yes, while you can go and create your own business entity on your own, look into getting those ancillary documents that will help operate the business.
And what we encourage, and this can get really overwhelming when you start thinking of all these documents, you have to do all this legal stuff. Don't look at it, if you're getting started, look at it more as a side hustle to try something and see if it's going to work. Test the market, see if people are interested in your product before you start worrying about all the legal aspects. Once you go full time and you're planning on doing a business 7 days a week or 5 days a week, then you can look at doing all the paperwork, making sure everything's legal. But to start, you're looking at a side hustle. Find something that's doesn't have a lot of liability. Get out there and try. See if the market even wants it. You're trying to solve a problem for somebody as an entrepreneur. Look for in the market what people need and how you can make their life easier. So if you want to get involved with the Biz Kidz, we're all over the country. The Biz Kidz Hub is our training and resource center where kids can log in. We have an online training center. We do calls on a weekly basis to kind of help inspire kids and give them some ideas. And we talk through different aspects of how to start a business. So if you want to get involved, bizkidsusa.org. We'd love to have you involved. Matt, thanks for taking the time to kind of confuse us with a legal jargon. And we love the input. And as you always say, it depends. So, yeah. Any final words?
No, sir. Thanks for having me, and best of luck to everyone.
Thank you, Matt. Have a great day, and we'll see you next time on the Biz Kidz Podcast.